Welcome back. Seeff Property Group indicates that Soweto market has doubled in price in the past decade. This is in comparison to the rest of Johannesburg, making Soweto properties highly lucrative. To unpack this phenomenon for us, we're now joined in studio by property developer Nomakhosi Makolota and property educator Khali Masooane. Ladies, good evening and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Hello,
Hi.
Thank you for inviting us.
It's an absolute pleasure. So now we're talking property, but specifically honing into the property space in townships. We see how Soweto has boomed in terms of value, doubled over the last decade, which is quite phenomenal. Is this what we are seeing with other townships as well, Khosi?
I would assume so. Just that we are based in Soweto, so I only know about Soweto, but I'm sure in other townships as well.
There is that boom. And Khali, from the work that you've done as an educator, are you finding that other townships are growing exponentially in terms of the prices of those houses as much as Soweto is?
Absolutely. I think it would be disingenuous to assume that you're going to put millions of people in a specific space and think nothing of value is going to come from it. So there definitely is a huge boom. Even just economically, oftentimes people had the notion that you live in the township and then you move out, right?
Yes.
But now people are taking it back into themselves. Like, I grew up here. I live here. This is my space and my home, and I want to reinvest into this. So it's all across the board.
And why do you think, and maybe let's just bring it back to Soweto, why do you think there is this boom in properties? I mean, at some point you'd find a 4-roomed house was valued at 150,000 rands, and now it's going for close to, and you'll correct me, 400,000 to 500,000 rands at the current moment. Why do you think there's been that increase, especially in the township of Soweto?
I think specifically Soweto has a huge historic landmark. So I think, and Nomakhosi will attest to this, the thing is with property and property investment in historically disadvantaged areas, it was, and if I'm allowed to say it in vernac, because it has more weight in that, it wasn't seen as property. Yeah. So now it's when there was an actual foresight, where people were physically seeing and financially seeing this is very viable, this is very tangible. It then created that space. One, it's spaces that are you understand what this is, this is home, and also it's affordable. Oftentimes, the areas which people were historically wanting to go to have now become very expensive. Yes. So now you go back to a space where I already know this place, I know the people, it's very communal, and it's affordable. It's a good quality home in an affordable space, which is why then people are just opting to live in the area, because it's like 1 or 2 taxis away, or I can just drive to work. So why would I not take, a good quality home that's half the price? Than just going to try and keep up with the Kumalos. Like, there's no point.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you develop specifically in Soweto, as you say, and we're finding that 40% of buyers in Soweto are under the age of 35, and most of them are first-time buyers. What range in terms of pricing do you find most of these buyers?
I would say in terms of the rental prices.
In terms of the buying prices?
I would say...
in what context do you think in terms of buying price?
So are we seeing more of the 35-year-olds buying houses to the value of 500,000, 1 million, 800,000? Which bracket do they
So it's between 5 and $1 million. And the reason for that, one, taxation. It's a lot cheaper for taxation and bond costs and such to do under $1 million. But also in terms of affordability. We do know the salary margins in terms of bond approvals where we lie, right? We do understand that the wage gap. So it tends to be easier to buy properties that are under $1 million. And I think also it puts onto the estimate that usually people will buy and then renovate, which is a lot easier than already buying like a pre-made house. Right. So that's generally the benchmark, between 5 and $1 million.
Okay. Yeah. And because you develop a lot in Soweto. Is it mostly residential?
Yeah, so I'm doing en-suite units. The room type of things, but more modernized, yeah.
The rooms,
yeah. Because initially that was the dream, but now with things that have changed, and we need to now provide quality residential areas for people. So we've now done like your en-suite with your bathroom, your kitchenette, and your lounge, yeah.
And is that mainly for students that are living around the UJ area, or are you finding young people renting those kind of spaces that are not necessarily students, but
it's young people, young couples. Yeah.
And how rife is that space? Because I know, like, for a lot of people, if you do have this property, you're an owner, you've got a title deed, maybe it's been passed down to you. and you've got a bit of money that you're able to use and create dirumzeo, as you say. How many of people living in Soweto are you seeing actually going that route of being umastandi?
It's booming. I must say, between the time, from the time that I started to now, a lot of people have started, I say like 40-50% people are going that route. Yeah.
And that infrastructure development, Khali, how much education do people have with regards to knowing what I should develop on my property? Am I overcapitalizing on my property? Am I going to get the returns? Because sometimes when you think of being umastandi, you start already dreaming of this life that will bring you R1 million a year, and it's not necessarily the case, because a lot of work goes into also you running those units on a day-to-day basis.
I think what I mentioned before when I said the informalization of it, right? It was always, like you saying, umastandi, and then there's rooms. And then we started growing, started getting more modernized, and now the issue is there's like a connotation that you can do whatever you want because, you know, the township, nobody really looks into it, and that's simply not true. You know, you have developers like Nomakhosi who actually go step by step. You have town planners, you have municipal, you have to involve and to comply with everyone, be it bulk services, because you're increasing the density of dwellings and people on the actual property in and of itself. So there was always this notion that, oh no, it is what it is, and it's like, no, it's not like that. You can get into a lot of trouble doing that, and that's something that we try to teach people. And also, you know, as an Investor of the Year, we actually mentor people. So whether you're starting out, you're in the big leagues like the big guns, the Nomakhosis of the world, yes, or you're brand new spanking out. And the funny thing about her is that she started off as a beginner, and she won the beginner, and she was the only female that won as Investor of the Year. Is that we also want to help you, so you understand that from your first only bachelor or room with A1, A2 in the back, to actually being a developer where it's an entire space of land, there are rules to this. You can't just start building. Like, I know a lot of people have done that, and please stop. But oftentimes people just need the knowledge. They just need the know-how, because there was always like an understanding that, you know, a property has, you know, financial returns on it. But it was never to what extent, whereas there were people who understood the actual magnitude of property investment. And it's only now, which this gigantic boom where people are like, wait, there's gold here. There's genuinely gold. If you provide people quality homes, you can actually make it. And that's what we try to do with Investor of the Year.
Sure. So, Khosi, how much did you start with? What kind of a property? What were the challenges that you had to go through?
So when I started, I thought, could I just get land, buy material and build, you know, and only to find out that it doesn't go like that. So even my budget and my thinking and my planning was just off. So fortunately, I got a mentor who mentored me and took me through everything. So now I had to, because initially when I bought the land, I wanted to go and buy material without even having the plan. Yeah, so it took me back. So I learned a lot, that you need to get the plans approved, do geotech report, and how it goes, just to put together the team, the professionals and stuff, and that everything needs to be compliant.
And some of the mistakes that you did in that process, were they costly?
Very costly, because when I started, I had little knowledge. Like I'm saying, I thought that I just need to buy material and start building. But even my costing was wrong.
And how many properties do you own now?
So I have 28 units.
28 units.
Yeah.
Sure. If you don't mind me asking in terms of how much you would make per unit, or how much you charge per unit, so that one could sort of get an understanding in terms of how this business actually is so lucrative.
So the units vary between 2,000 and 3.5, depending on the size of the unit. So you have like your small bachelor, your medium bachelor, and your one-bedroom apartment.
So this is quite a space where people are willing to pay 2,000, 3,000 rands in order for them to be able to occupy such spaces. Could we then possibly move the strategy into the Johannesburg CBD? Because there are so many buildings that are standing there. Clearly there are willing people that would want to pay that rent and live in proper en-suites where they would get quite decent housing. Could that not be moved into the CBD?
Absolutely. We even have a category with Investor of the Year that's inner city. Right, for people who are investing in the city. I think that there's two issues with inner city. There's the connotation that it's dangerous, and you know, my argument against that is it's dangerous everywhere. You know, this is South Africa. So, but inner city has a lot of potential, and I feel like a lot of the time, people always realize on the far end of something that, oh, you know, it's like when Airbnb started, those who started right as it began are way more ahead than now people who are in super saturated markets, right? So now you guys understand there is a boom happening in townships and there is a boom happening in Soweto. You might want to be the first ones to go in a city, because if you look at you know, spaces like Maboneng, for example, right? It was taken and it was completely revitalized and it became this amazing thing. All it takes is another person to do that and then you're good to go, right? And you have a lot of institutions that are willing to back in a city. There's fundamentally institutions that it's literally that's their space. So I think historically, and Nomakhosi can attest to this, it was also funding. Yes. So if you want to develop or do something in the township, it would be a lot harder for you to get the funding, to get the finance. And so now we're looking at it where institutions fundamentally, like your ABSAs, you know, or your TAFs, they will go, absolutely, we will walk this journey with you. So that's really great.
The boom in the value of the properties in the township, what impact does it have on the perception of the township? Is it, do people view the township differently now that these houses are worth so much more, Khosi?
Yes, because before they thought people could not afford in the township. So now people are willing to pay for quality. So people can afford. There's lots of money in the township. And now with the development and stuff, so those increase the value of the properties.
Does it also not leave out like a bit of a missing middle for people who most probably, possibly if we take the FLISP initiative, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'd need to be earning about 3,500 rands in order for you to be able to qualify for the FLISP. But then at the same time, there isn't a house that you would be able to pay 2,000 rands for because there's no property worth 200,000 rands. So where does it then leave those people who wanted to start out in the township but are now left out?
So here's where I come in when I say there's actual institutions that come. If you take a look, that ABSA has a buy-to-let program. It's the first one of its kind where they will take the future rental of the property you're trying to invest in or buy into account. So if you're saying, I'm going to buy this property and it's for investment, and we check the market and the market says on average it's about 2 point something, 3 point something, ABSA will take that into account. And in turn, that fundamentally helps you where you're in that market where you have, you know, a little bit more than what they need, but too little for you to do it on your own. So if you look at the education and at the mentorship and the coaching, and you just seek out spaces where they literally will help you. It's the same with, you know, TAF, where they will walk that journey with you. It's not just a matter of we check the spec and we're like, no. It's like, okay, let's see what works here or what doesn't work. So I think if people just understood, you know, like stuff like ABSA with their buy-to-let a program, and not your buy-to-let, your future rentals, I beg your pardon, that fundamentally helps. And also, it's not just FLIS, there's other institutions that genuinely will help you on that journey.
How important, you keep talking, I know because you're a property educator, how important is it for us to go out and seek that education before moving within the property space? Because sometimes it looks so easy. Like Khosi was saying, I've got land, I've got money, I've got material, why not just get on with it? How important is it, and where should we be looking for that education?
So one of my mentors always says this, and she knows this, Andrew Walker, he says that knowledge without action is useless, but action without knowledge is very dangerous. So you're going to pay your school fees. Either you're going to pay it in the beginning or you're going to pay in the end. And there's spaces like, one of the ones that I know, which is SA Properties Investors Network. That's literally what they do. And it's so amazing to see when somebody goes, not only is the table big enough, it's infinite. There's this culture of gatekeeping information, right? And now we live in an era where people want others to be great. People want others to do better and be better. And I don't think it's that hard anymore, but I fundamentally say, please, 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 get your education. It is going to seem like it's a lot, but what you do not want, like if we say, for example, what would have happened if you started building? You just started building, and then municipal comes and goes, ma'am, what is this? So I absolutely think it's super important to get the education.
Lastly, Khosi, what advice would you have to a young person out there who wants to get into the property space, doesn't know where to start, obviously doesn't know of the mistakes and the challenges that you possibly could have gone through? What advice would you have for them at this starting point?
It's to get as much information as you can. Network, get coaches, get a mentor, learn as much as you can. because it's easy to make mistakes, and they're very costly.
And they're very costly.
They're very costly.
Yeah, that's so true. Ladies, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We certainly do hope you'll be seeing more units coming out of you, especially Khosi, not only in Soweto, but in other townships as well. Thank you so much for your time.